Dusty Gulch was a place where the sun beat down like a hammer, and the wind carried whispers of trouble. It wasn't a friendly town. It was a place where outlaws came to hide, and honest folk tried to keep their heads down. The buildings were old and worn, the paint peeling from the wooden walls like sunburnt skin. The air always tasted of dust and regret. Saloons lined the main street, their swinging doors offering a glimpse into smoky rooms filled with card games and hard liquor. Gunfights weren't unusual, and the local sheriff was more interested in avoiding problems than solving them. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, and every smile felt like a gamble. This was a town that had long forgotten the meaning of peace, a place where survival was the only law that mattered. Folks knew that anyone riding into Dusty Gulch was either running from something or looking for it, and neither option usually ended well. The vultures circling overhead were a constant reminder of the town's grim reality. Into this harsh landscape rode Serafina. She wasn't like the other weary travelers who limped into Dusty Gulch. Serafina sat tall in the saddle, her eyes scanning the town with a quiet confidence. Her dusty riding dress couldn't hide the grace in her movements, and her soft southern accent was a stark contrast to the rough voices that echoed through the streets. But it was the rattlesnake coiled around her shoulders that drew the most stares. Most folks wouldn't get near a snake, let alone keep one as a pet. It was a diamondback, thick and dangerous, its scales shimmering in the sun. It seemed to be asleep, but everyone knew it was just waiting. Serafina's arrival was a ripple in the stagnant pond of Dusty Gulch, a promise of something different, something dangerous. The first test came quickly. As Serafina dismounted in front of the saloon, a group of 3 outlaws swaggered over, blocking her path. Their leader, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, leered at her. Well, what have we here? A fancy lady lost in the desert. Serafina didn't flinch. Her voice, soft as honeysuckle, cut through the tense air. Just passing through, gentlemen, looking for a cool drink. The outlaw chuckled, reaching out to touch the snake. That's a mighty peculiar pet you got there, darling. Is it friendly? Only to those who are friendly to me, Serafina replied, her eyes hardening. Now, if you'll excuse me. She stepped around them, her gaze unwavering, and entered the saloon, leaving the outlaws speechless and strangely unsettled. The snake hadn't moved, but they all felt its presence, a silent promise of danger. Inside the dimly lit saloon, whispers followed Serafina like shadows. Who was this woman? Where did she come from? And why a rattlesnake? The townsfolk speculated in hushed tones, their eyes darting between her and the outlaws she'd just faced down. Some thought she was a bounty hunter, come to collect on the many wanted men hiding in Dusty Gulch. Others believed she was a gambler, looking for a high-stakes game. The bartender, a weary man named Silas, leaned in close as he poured her a drink. You got folks talking, ma'am. This town ain't used to strangers, especially ones like you. Serafina smiled faintly. Then perhaps it's time for a change. Wouldn't you agree? She took a sip of her drink, her gaze sweeping across the room, taking in every face, every detail. The rumors had begun, and that was exactly what she wanted. Under the cover of swirling rumors, Serafina began her hunt. She carried a small, worn leather-bound book, its pages filled with names and details, the 5 men she sought. She spent her days observing them, noting their habits, their weaknesses, their allies. She'd watch them from the shadows, a silent predator studying her prey. She learned that Jedediah, the scar-faced outlaw from the saloon, had a gambling problem and a weakness for whiskey. That Silas, the bartender, knew more than he let on. That the self-proclaimed leader of the town, a man named Judge Thompson, held court every evening at the back of the general store. With each observation, the pieces of her deadly puzzle began to fall into place. The townsfolk saw a charming stranger. She saw only targets. The desert sun seemed to mock her, its relentless heat a constant reminder of the day she lost everything. She closed her eyes, and the memory flooded back. A field of wildflowers, a shared laugh, her sister Lily's bright smile. Then, the darkness. The brutal attack, the screams swallowed by the wind, the lifeless body left behind. Lily had been everything to Serafina, her protector, her confidant, her only family. A single tear traced a path down Serafina's cheek. It wasn't just justice she sought. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim a piece of herself that had been stolen that day. Each name in her book was a burning ember, fueling her resolve, pushing her forward, one step closer to settling the debt they owed. She would make them pay, each and every one. Jedediah was her first target. She found him alone, slumped over a table at the saloon, nursing a glass of whiskey and losing badly at cards. Serafina approached him, her voice a low murmur. "Mr. Jedediah, isn't it? I believe we have some unfinished business." He looked up bleary-eyed. "Who are you?" Serafina smiled, a chillingly sweet expression. "Someone who knows about the wildflowers, Mr. Jedediah. Someone who knows about Lily." His face paled. He tried to rise, but Serafina was faster. She leaned close, whispering in his ear the details of that day. The details only someone who was there could know. She watched the fear creep into his eyes, the guilt twisting his features. She had him, not with a gun, but with the truth. He was hers to command. Jedediah's sudden change in demeanor didn't go unnoticed. The other outlaws, including Judge Thompson, grew suspicious. They knew Jedediah was the weakest link, the one most likely to crack under pressure. When they saw him talking to the Southern woman, their unease turned to alarm. Judge Thompson confronted Jedediah later that night. "What did she want? What did you tell her?" Jedediah, terrified, stammered. "Nothing, Judge, I swear. She just asked for directions." But Thompson didn't believe him. He knew something was wrong, that the game had changed. He gathered the remaining members of their group. "We need to be careful," he warned. "That woman, she's trouble. She knows something. We need to find out what, and we need to do it fast." The hunt had begun, but now they were the hunted. The outlaws, now on high alert, began to shadow Serafina, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. Judge Thompson ordered them to find out what she knew, and, if necessary, to silence her permanently. Tense standoffs became commonplace. Serafina would find herself facing them in the street, their hands hovering over their guns. One afternoon, as she was leaving the general store, two of Thompson's men blocked her path. "We need to talk, ma'am," one of them growled. Serafina's hand rested casually on the head of her snake. "I'm all ears, gentlemen, but I suggest you choose your words carefully." The air crackled with tension, a silent battle of wills. Every smile was a potential threat, every word a carefully calculated move in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Sheriff Brody watched the escalating conflict from his office window, a deep furrow etched on his brow. He was a weary man, burdened by the weight of his badge in a town that respected only power. He knew Judge Thompson and his gang were bad news, but he also knew they kept a certain order, a twisted version of peace. Serafina's arrival had upset that balance. He saw the pain in her eyes, the unwavering determination, and he understood her need for vengeance. Part of him wanted to help her, to turn a blind eye to her actions. But he was a lawman, sworn to uphold the law, even in Dusty Gulch. He was trapped between his duty and his conscience, a prisoner of his own morality. He was not sure what to do. Needing someone who knew the desert, Serafina sought out old Silas, the prospector. He was a wizened man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by the sun and wind. He'd spent his life searching for gold, but all he'd found was hardship. Silas was a loner, distrustful of everyone, but Serafina sensed a hidden kindness beneath his gruff exterior. She found him camped outside of town, his mule grazing nearby. "Mr. Silas," she said, her voice calm, "I need your help." He eyed her suspiciously. "What makes you think I'd help you, little lady?" "Because I know you're not blind, Mr. Silas. You've seen what those men have done to this town, and you know they need to be stopped." She offered him a share of what she recovered from the men. Silas thought for a moment and reluctantly agreed. An uneasy alliance was formed. With Silas's knowledge of the desert, Serafina set a trap for the outlaw named Bart. She knew Bart frequented a hidden spring a few miles outside of town. Using Jedediah as bait, she sent a message to Bart, luring him to the spring with the promise of gold. When Bart arrived, he found Jedediah tied to a tree, a rattlesnake coiled nearby. Serafina emerged from the shadows, her face grim. "Hello, Bart. I believe you know why I'm here." Bart sneered. "You think you can take me, little lady? You're out of your depth." Serafina smiled coldly. "Perhaps, but I know you're thirsty, Bart, and I know that water is poisoned." She revealed her knowledge of his past crimes, his betrayals, his deepest fears. Bart was trapped, both physically and mentally. The desert heat, the poison water, and Serafina's relentless interrogation broke him. One of the remaining outlaws, a young man named Caleb, was haunted by what he'd done. He'd been swept up in Thompson's gang, lured by the promise of easy money, but the memory of Lily's face tormented him. He saw her in every young woman he met, her silent accusation a constant weight on his conscience. He watched Serafina from afar, admiring her courage, her unwavering determination. He knew what she was doing was dangerous, but he also knew it was right. One night, he approached her secretly. "I want to help you," he whispered. "I can't live with what I've done anymore." He was taking a big risk. Serafina eyed him warily. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. Caleb knew he had a lot to prove. The memory of that day was a brand seared into Serafina's soul. It wasn't just the act of murder, but the sheer cruelty of it. The outlaws had laughed as they tormented Lily, their eyes filled with a cold, heartless glee. They'd taken her innocence, her spirit, her very life, leaving Serafina with nothing but a hollow ache and a burning desire for revenge. She remembered Lily's final words, a desperate plea for Serafina to run, to save herself. But Serafina had been too late, too weak. Now, she carried Lily's memory with her, a constant reminder of her failure, a driving force behind her relentless pursuit of justice. She would honor Lily's sacrifice, even if it meant sacrificing herself in the process. She will make them pay. Thompson, suspicious of Caleb's change of heart, had been watching him closely. He knew Caleb was wavering, and he decided to use that to his advantage. He confronted Caleb, threatening his family if he didn't cooperate. Terrified, Caleb agreed to lure Serafina into a trap. He told Serafina that he knew the location of Thompson's hidden stash of money, the money they had stolen from Lily. He offered to lead her there, promising it would give her the evidence she needed to bring Thompson down. Serafina, desperate for justice, agreed to go with him, unaware that she was walking into a deadly ambush. When they arrived at the canyon, Thompson and his men were waiting, their guns drawn. Caleb's betrayal was complete. Surrounded, Serafina knew her situation was dire, but she didn't panic. Her eyes narrowed, assessing her enemies, calculating her odds. Judge Thompson smirked. "It's over, little lady. You should have left well enough alone." Serafina's smile was cold. "It's never over until I say it is." The canyon erupted in gunfire. Serafina moved with a speed that belied her graceful appearance, dodging bullets, using the rocks as cover. She wasn't just fighting with her gun. She was fighting with her wit, her knowledge of their weaknesses, her unyielding resolve. The rattlesnake, sensing the danger, struck out with deadly precision, adding to the chaos. It was a desperate battle, a clash of wills, a final showdown between justice and vengeance. As the gunfight raged, Serafina used her words as weapons. She reminded Thompson of his past failures, his broken promises, his cowardice. She sowed seeds of doubt among his men, turning them against each other. She knew their weaknesses, their fears, their secrets. She spoke of the stolen money, revealing details that only someone who had been there could know, making them question Thompson's leadership. She reminded them that Thompson didn't care about them, only about himself. And then Caleb, driven by guilt, turned his gun on Thompson, giving Serafina the opening she needed. It was her mind, her ability to manipulate and control, that was her true strength, far more deadly than any gun or snake. The snake was just an accessory. With Thompson dead, only one outlaw remained, the one who had delivered the killing blow to Lily. Serafina found him hiding in a cave, consumed by fear and regret. He begged for mercy, claiming he had only been following orders. Serafina's eyes were filled with a cold fury. You took a life, a beautiful life. You deserve to face the consequences. She didn't kill him outright. Instead, she forced him to relive that day, to confront the horror of his actions. She made him understand the pain he had inflicted, the emptiness he had created. Finally, she left him there, alone with his guilt and the vultures circling overhead, a fate worse than death. He would live with what he did for the rest of his life. Justice had been served. The dust settled, and silence descended upon Dusty Gulch. Serafina stood alone, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. She had achieved her revenge, but at what cost? Lily was still gone, and the emptiness in Serafina's heart remained. She looked at her snake. She thought about staying in Dusty Gulch, helping to rebuild the town, to bring some semblance of peace to its troubled streets. Sheriff Brody had offered her a position, recognizing her strength and her sense of justice. But could she truly find peace in a place filled with so many painful memories? Or was it time to move on, to seek a new purpose, a new beginning? She didn't know what to do next. The decision weighed heavily on her. She has to choose. Dusty Gulch was forever changed. The grip of fear that had held the town captive for so long had been broken. People started to rebuild, to repair their homes, to open their businesses again. Sheriff Brody, inspired by Serafina's courage, vowed to uphold the law with newfound vigor. Caleb, seeking redemption, dedicated himself to helping the town heal. The memory of Serafina, the mysterious woman with the soft southern accent and the deadly snake, became a legend, a whisper of hope in the desert wind. She had shown them that even in the darkest of times, justice was possible, that even the most broken places could be mended. The town was marked by her presence. Dusty Gulch was starting to heal and rebuild. Serafina made her decision. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, she mounted her horse, the rattlesnake coiled around her shoulders. She looked back at Dusty Gulch, a faint smile playing on her lips. She had brought justice to this troubled town, but her journey was far from over. With a final nod to Sheriff Brody and a silent farewell to Caleb, she turned her horse towards the setting sun and rode away. She was leaving behind a legend, a whisper of hope for the future. Serafina was riding off into the sunset, forever etched in the memory of Dusty Gulch, a reminder that even the deadliest weapons can't compare to the strength of a determined heart. The future was unknown, but she was ready.